Geo Gearheads.
Well, hello and welcome to Geo Gearheads. Tonight, we are going to do episode 410 about Adventure Labs. Now, this is number 2 because we've talked about Adventure Labs before, but this time is going to be even better because we've got a great guest with us, and we've got Kev MacD. Kev MacD, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, maybe some geocaching history, your mother's name and social security number?
No. How about I talk about my credit card information? Would that help?
Okay.
Great. Kev MacD. My name's Kevin. I've been a geocacher for, 3,000 and some odd caches now. I'm the vice president of the British Columbia Geocaching Association, and I have lots of fun caching.
Nice. Let's take a moment and talk about this geocaching association you're with. Go ahead and plug it and tell us all about it, and why should we join right now where we are?
The BC Geocaching Association represents British Columbia geocachers, and we try and take on a variety of geocaching issues from different groups that control public land, for example, making sure they have good geocaching policies. We have 20 GPS units that we lend out to groups that are doing geocaching education. So we lend them out to the scouts and the guides quite often, and lots of other groups that do meetups to learn geocaching, that sort of thing. And of course, our big thing is helping support Geo Woodstock coming up next year. So we're very much involved in that, and we're very excited to see everybody.
Nice. Yes, Geo Woodstock 19? 18.
19. Yeah, 18.
18, thank you. In 2020.
Exactly. Nice and confusing.
So we missed 19 altogether in this calculation. Geo Woodstock 18.
XVIII. There you go.
I, Captain.
I.
I've suddenly forgot. I want to say Surrey, but I know that's not right. What area of Metro Vancouver is it in again?
It's going to be in Abbotsford.
Abbotsford, yes.
But it's okay. It sounds a lot like Surrey. It does.
Yeah, exactly. It looks that way, when it's written out, but it pronounces completely different.
Exactly. It's all in the emphasis, or as I like to say, the emphasis. It's at the TradeX in Abbotsford. It's the week after the 20th anniversary celebration. So we're kind of telling people, join at the 20th anniversary celebration in Seattle. The APE event is going to be amazing. And then make your way across the border, less than 2-hour drive up to Abbotsford, BC, Canada for Geo Woodstock 18 in 2020. XVIII.
Wet Coaster says Surrey is always right.
Oh, yeah. Thanks, Gary. Yeah.
Hey, we also have GSM times 2 wants to know how many members are in the BCGA.
Wow, that's a great question. I'm afraid that I don't rightly know the answer. We had a pile before the summer, and we've been on a big drive, and I haven't looked at the membership numbers in over a month. So, it's in the hundreds for sure, but beyond that, I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. I brought this out of nowhere, so thank you for talking about that. Now, we're really here to talk about Adventure Labs.
Awesome. Where do you want to start?
I'm sorry, Land Monkey says I'm in so much trouble. We'll have to have a little chat about Geo Woodstock information later tonight.
I think he was, talking about maybe how much Surrey and Abbotsford sound alike. And
yes, exactly.
18 and 19 and 20 and a few of those.
Oh boy,
it's okay. I'm here. I've got your back, Chris.
See, Kev, that's why I like you.
Really? I thought it was the money.
I didn't say anything about Land Monkey. That's why I like you. Well, if you are watching or listening tonight, you may notice it's a little different. Daryl W4 texted me just a few minutes before start saying he wasn't feeling well and his voice isn't up to its normal podcast quality level. So he's not joining us this evening, but instead we're going to talk with Kev MacD about Adventure Labs. And sit back, you're going to love looking at the Adventure Lab builder, listening about it, and finding out how these things work. So let's start there. Can you give us an overview of what Adventure Labs are?
Absolutely. Adventure Labs, the next generation of what we used to call lab caches. Often lab caches, you would see them at mega events, for example, driving around. Some great ones. I think one of the first ones I ever did was the Ape Mega. And it was all based on the TV show that was shot in the area. So driving around, finding different locations where they had some exciting things set up. And you're looking, of course, for find codes for them. So Adventure Labs, the new version of that, based on applications for your phone. So you're getting this now off the Apple Store or off Google Play for your phone. There's an app for that sort of thing. A couple of things. It's like the lab caches, so there's no physical cache requirement, although you can integrate it in with real geocaches and use those to keep track of the find codes, for example, or if it's a mystery, maybe help with the mystery could be given in the Adventure Lab, that sort of thing. New feature, the option to geofence the locations. So this is one of the new things. So on the application, the author can say you must be within 50 meters. Oh, sorry, yards. 50 meters, 50 yards, whatever you like. Yeah, there's a distance that you have to be in. And there's lots of talk right now about how big you should make that circle. Someone's visiting your city and they only have data in the hotel. You want that circle to be very big. But you don't necessarily want people to be armchair logging them.
Right. Now, Kevin, is this imperial and metric? Or is it just imperial?
It's actually, I believe it's just in metric, but maybe that's my account. I've never tried it.
No, I mean, the way you go, no, wait, yards, made me think maybe it's just in imperial. Okay.
Well, I just want to, trying to appeal to a wider audience. Not everyone speaks metric.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate you. That's why I like you.
Yeah, got your back, Chris.
Okay. Okay, so we can geofence or not.
We can geofence or not. There's also the option of linear play. So a bunch of different lab locations, Adventure Lab locations, and you must do them in order. So you can tell perhaps a more cohesive story. If you're telling a murder mystery Adventure Lab, you may want to find the clues in order to figure out who did it, who done it, as they would say. Yes, only in meters. Thanks, Ian.
It's only in meters. So, and that by doing it in a linear fashion, I've done one in that way. It can also direct you on the most efficient route. If you have, a dozen points and you could go in any direction to get them, sometimes doing them in a linear fashion will help the finders get there in a more expedient manner.
And there's really no limitations how far apart or how close together. The recommendation, though, is that people do walk it. So it's set up for people who are walking. So maybe that makes a lot of sense as well. You don't want them walking 2 miles for something that could be done in a few hundred meters. Look at that, across the streams.
Trek to Zero says, good timing on this episode, a new version of the app today with the ability to leave a log. So pleased about this addition. Miss not being able to tell my tales.
Wow, that's awesome to hear.
So there you go. I knew something new was dropping, but I couldn't put my finger on it before the show started.
Yeah, and as an owner of an Adventure Lab, it will be good to get some feedback from people. That was missing, I think, in the old, as far back as yesterday version. So a lot of the things remain the same. Few new changes. You can include media now, which is kind of nice. You can play video as opposed to just the text, and a lot of the things do remain the same. You have to make sure that people are going to a place where they have permission to be, where the local laws allow what you're doing. You're not supposed to harm the environment, and don't hide anything that looks even remotely like a bomb.
You said the word.
I know.
You know, I found geocaches that look suspiciously like a bomb, and it's never a good thing.
Yeah,
So
you read those stories, and of course, it brings such negative publicity to geocaching.
yeah,
When the bomb squad goes in and blows up $1.49 of your tradables.
yeah. That means I've got to go back to McDonald's, buy a Happy Meal that I'm not going to eat just so I can get the toy to put it in a geocache.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The fries are good. So.
Okay. Oh, well, thank you. That was a good overview. Now Kevin, I'm really sorry. I still can't get the verbiage right for Adventure Labs. Each step in an Adventure Lab that is an adventure, correct?
That's a location.
It's a location.
It's a location. So
How
the
many?
whole thing is an Adventure Lab.
Okay, an Adventure Lab. I went too long with lab caches, and
yes, and it's almost unfortunate that they chose to use the word lab with this, because there's now so much confusion. You know, if they really wanted to make a mess, they should have called it Where I Labs.
Yeah, there you go. Locationless Where I Labs.
There you go. Reverse location. Yeah, never mind. So yeah, lab caches have now become adventure labs.
Mm-hmm.
Now Ian is saying each stage is called the lab cache. Okay, well, when you're building it, each stage is called the location. So
there you go. So,
and the complete series is the adventure.
In each adventure lab.
Sorry, I missed that, Chris. Say that again.
What's the maximum number of locations you can have for each adventure lab?
For right now, they've been giving away 5 and 10 location labs.
And you've just used a great phrase. They've been giving away.
Yes, this is not something you can just go and create.
Right.
So that's a difference from a traditional cache where you can just say, I want to create a new cache. And obviously that undergoes a review process and gets published. These ones are being awarded by HQ. And originally something like 250 were given out. They've been continuing to give them out over time. And I don't know if it's still true in the original notes. The one that I got last week, for example, said that some were 5s and some were 10s, just on kind of depending on if you were an individual or a mega or an organization.
Right. So megas and organizations is the only place we had seen adventure labs up until until HQ released them to individuals several months ago. And was it last week? There was another release.
And I got one.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm pretty excited, actually.
And GSM times 2 says he was just given his last week as well.
Excellent. Congratulations. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing some of the creative adventure labs and seeing what people can do with them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel this is an evolution? That's the better word of the virtual cache.
Wow, a virtual cache. I've never really thought of the comparison between the two, but I guess they are. A virtual cache, you're typically taking a picture of yourself or taking a picture of something close by. So there's a relationship between that and the find code.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
This year, there's no posting. As a matter of fact, as Trexer was saying, they've only just allowed any kind of logging to it. Although they did have a sort of a star rating system right from the get-go.
So, do you mind if we take a look at the Adventure Lab builder and be able to see how these things are used?
It's highly secret. I would love to show it to you.
Okay. Highly secret, and yet you're going to show it.
Yes. Yeah. I just love that. So this is in my account, and I haven't had time to really start working on my own adventure lab. So what I'd like to do is kind of walk you through the building of the BCGA adventure lab, just so we can sort of see how the interface works. And the first thing I did, and I did it in excitement last week, was there's a button up here where it says 0 adventure credits. It said 1 adventure credit, and I clicked on it, and it added this My Adventures part to the page and put in a blank adventure for me to start working with.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you drill into that, and this now we're kind of looking at the top level part of the adventure. So when you open this up in your phone, it's got a number of elements that you see before you start to see the locations. And you have to build that. You have to set that up really before you can start building locations. So the one that the BCGA did was called Vancouver Waterfront.
Okay.
I love typing with thousands of people watching.
Yes. No, it's okay. Nobody's really looking.
Oh, okay. They'll be forgiving, will they?
Mhm.
A cover image. So each one of these has a fairly nice photo of it, and it tends to be fairly wide and fairly skinny. So I'm just going to pop up a directory of photos that I've taken, and you can see I've chosen a photo of the Vancouver Convention Center, which is, of course, right on the Vancouver waterfront. I've preloaded the starting coordinates. Sorry, go ahead, Chris.
I think that's very iconic.
Yeah, it is very iconic. And of course, that's where all of the cruise ships come into Vancouver with hundreds and thousands of cachers on them all through the summer. It's kind of shut down now, just doing the Alaska stuff, but during the summer it's busy. They were saying that in one day in this little area right around the Adventure Lab, there was 30,000 people on Saturday that had come in on cruise ships. I know. I don't even want to think what percentage of them were geocachers.
Obviously, probably 20, at least 20,000 of the 30.
I would have thought.
Yeah. 2/3 have to be geocachers.
And
Why else would they even gotten off the boat?
Exactly. And there's actually one right at the dock as well that if you know where you're looking, you can almost see it from the cruise ship if your cruise ship is in the right berth. They asked for a bit of a description of this area. You're trying to tempt people into doing your adventure lab. So in this area, I wrote a little blurb about tourists to the area and the Vancouver location, a little bit of a tease about talking to one of the historical pub owners in Gastown called Gassy Jack.
Now, Kev, is that just plain text? Is it HTML? Can you do any formatting there?
No, I believe that it's just plain text.
Okay.
I can't say that I've tried any formatting, but from what I know from the geocaching website, there's lots of instructions and things like that when you start to go to add HTML. So I think this is just plain text. This custom access code, it has to be unique in the Adventure Lab world, and it allows people to do the Adventure Lab either before it's completely published, or if you don't want to publish it at all publicly, it allows people to access it. And of course, the ever standard, I've read and agree, which of course I've read and agree to. Yeah, right. And we update the adventure. And so you can see now that the banner's there, it's added the name, here's this description. If you're following along, that little code is over here. So there's a link you can send to your friends. And of course, one of these codes that everyone hates.
The QR code.
Exactly, the QR code. So you can scan
take
it.
that code, say the Vancouver Tourist Bureau, has this, they could put that QR code on their webpage and say, hey, you want to take a tour of the waterfront?
There you go.
Or scan
That'd be a great idea. And make it exactly the size of Munsey stickers just to mess people up.
Ooh, there you go. And put those on all the lampposts.
Exactly. All over, on top of the Munsey stickers.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-oh. Now I'm going to be getting hate mail. Up here, you can see this adventure is off. So it's still in development mode. I was mentioning that there is a playable but not visible mode. Oh, look, my desktop updating. And there's a public playable / visible mode. And so the visible means when you go look on your app, there's the icon that says there's an adventure lab here.
Nice.
Yeah. So you can make those choices. We'll leave it off for now. And you can see they're talking about create new location. I got my verbiage from here. So I'm thinking that this is the new verbiage. These are locations. They used to be called lab caches. Now they're called locations.
Okay.
But before we get to the actual locations, I We talked about this. This is a sequential order piece. So if I turn this on, as I create these locations, I have to do them in order as the player.
Oh, interesting.
And
Right.
if I leave it off, then you can do these locations in any order at all. And you can flip this back and forth. It's not going to force you to leave it on or off until it's published. Now I've created one. Can have a quick look at it, and then we'll build another one. So this is a location we're looking at now. And again, it's got its own location title. So this isn't one that you have to do in order. This isn't probably the one you would do first. This is just happens to be the one that I built first.
Okay.
For this. Gassy Jack, very popular pub owner in the days when Vancouver was not even Vancouver yet, frankly. And he spoke a lot, which is why they called him Gassy. That's 1,000 times better than the other Gassy.
Well, I was thinking that, or he was the one who went around and did put up or turned on all the street lights. You remember the gas lights?
The gas lights, yes. And in fact, we have a steam clock not far from this location. So gas and steam and
gassy clock there.
Gassy clock. As a matter of fact, there's a geocache not far from the steam clock, and it makes a point of saying this is not why it's called Gastown. You have to go down the street and visit Gassy Jack. And the Gassy Jack one makes the point of saying this has nothing to do with beans. Again, Gassy needs a location. So we're going to put the coordinates in, very familiar to geocachers. And that gives you the nice iconic spot on the map where you know to go visit. And when you're running the app, when you have the app in your hand, of course, it's providing compass style navigation, how far you are away from that location. Here we are. And thanks again, Ian. It is in meters, and it looks like it's in meters only, Chris.
See, now I'm not going to be able to figure it out at all. They've just alienated all the U.S.
They have this thing called Google.
What is this Google you talk about?
I think if you type in yards to meters, it will help you out.
Okay.
Or meters to yards, whichever way you want to do it. It is optional, so you can apply geofencing or not apply geofencing as you like. So this means you must be within this number of meters to this location before you can enter the find code.
Right. And Kevin, you talked, you just touched on it briefly. What are your advantages, disadvantages to enabling or disabling geofencing?
Well, I think one of the big considerations is if there are visitors to your city and they don't have data, they're not going to be able to log it. So too small an area means that they're not going to be able to do your adventure lab. So there's an argument that says make this quite a big number, possibly, and if I can go crazy enough to say, kilometers, like 2.5 kilometers, then people might be able to go back to their hotel or to their cruise ship and still be able to log this location. Outside of that, there's been some controversy about people armchair logging. So I think you're trying to balance the people who don't have data with the people who are armchair logging, if you decide to apply geofencing at all.
Gotcha.
Right. If you're not worried about it, turn it off.
Right. The Adventure Lab. Sorry, I'm trying to do multiple things.
You talk, I'll drink.
The Adventure Lab at the Ape Cache was linear. You had to go through step by step, and there was a location inside the tunnel, and there's no way you're going to get cell signal in there. So I one of the things I've asked before is they set the geofence large enough that it went outside the tunnel on both ends.
So you could collect the find code, get back to data, and log it. This is almost like getting back to your hotel where you've got Wi-Fi.
Hotel or nearby coffee shop or fast food restaurant that offers free Wi-Fi. Exactly.
And this particular area of the city, it's hard to walk around without being hit with free Wi-Fi. Why? One of the reasons that the number is so small here. There's a Starbucks right there and all sorts of things.
Gotcha. Nice.
Carrying on. Again,
Okay,
there's
please.
a bit of a location description talking about Gassy Jack and why he's important, why we brought you here today, and the statue itself, which is quite an interesting statue, standing on top of a barrel. It's a little hard to see there, but his whole concept was he built his bar pretty much overnight by offering a bunch of laborers as much as they could drink in one sitting if they built his bar. So,
Interesting.
and the
That's
closest bar was 25 miles away. I'll use miles for you. So I think it was to their benefit to help him build a bar.
nice.
Now, look, a fine code. Fine code is always composed of two things. You have to ask the question and you have to provide the correct answer. Here we've got in front of Gassy Jack are some drain gates.
Mhm.
It sort of pops up. What are the two words of the company name on those drain grates? And it's not, in fact, you wish, but this would be the correct answer that you would have to put in here. Now, this is compared to what people type into the application for the fine code to determine whether they got it correct.
Okay.
So this would be, this would look something like, Vancouver Foundry in real life. Not foundry, but in fact, foundry. I'll get it right eventually. There we go.
Wow. There's no rush. Now, what about uppercase, lowercase?
Doesn't
any
matter.
punctuation?
Punctuation will matter. Upper and lowercase does not. So you don't have to be too fussy about that. Again, I think there's some finesse in designing the correct answer here.
Okay.
I wanted at least 2-word answers. It makes it harder to crack using various hacking techniques. And not all of them are plain dictionary words like these 2 words. So there is some thought put into that if you care about people armchair logging them.
Okay.
I'm going to just go back and point out 2 other things. I
Please.
did put text in here for the description, and I didn't need to. It will take a URL of a YouTube video. So you can do one or the other. Put in straight text, or if you're a videographer, you can shoot a whole video and just put the URL in there.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
So now we've gone to Gassy Jack,
Mhm.
and we've entered the fine code. The system sort of creates a geocaching log for you, and they're calling them journals. At this point, you get no input on the journal. The journal is actually written by the Adventure Lab creator.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes. And so you get a choice of an image or a YouTube video and some text that becomes part of the journal, or what you might lightly call the log of this thing. But again, it's not written by the person doing it. It's written by the person who has created the Adventure Lab.
And once you've put in the fine code correctly, the journal is all you can see about this location.
That's right. The rest goes away.
Okay.
I can put in cheers. Of course, he was a pub owner.
There you go.
And so what you will end up with when completing this location is Gassy Jack, a picture of Gassy Jack, the statue, and the word cheers.
Right.
So hopefully that's reminiscent enough for you when you go home and you're trying to remember what this Adventure Lab was all about. And I think that's the point of this. It's your journal. It's your memory. So it is a little bit unfortunate maybe that the Adventure Lab creator creates that as opposed to you creating it for yourself.
Right.
I don't know how cheers translates into, say, Swedish or something. It might be something rude.
Oh. And well, that's a good point. There is only one language involved here, isn't there? I don't believe the app does any translation.
It does no translation. You can fill this out completely in another language. There are many Adventure Labs that are not in English. But yeah, there's no option for translation. That's pretty much like cache pages too, though.
That's true. I mean, but cache pages, don't you have more space to write? So you could write it in both, say, English and German.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So you'll notice down here that in all of these fields, there is a maximum number of characters. So for the journal message, it's 100 and is it additive, or is that is the total? So 140 characters maximum, just smaller than a tweet,
Exactly.
frankly. So we update the location with all of our hard work, and our location is now ready to go.
Whew. Okay, so we've made one location
And we've
with
made
correct
one.
line code. We could turn on the Adventure Lab at this point, couldn't we?
We could. One of the things that they caution you about, though, is once somebody has logged it, a fair bit of your location flexibility goes away, which includes adding more locations.
Oh, interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I assume once somebody's logged it, you can't go and nudge locations. Let's say, you go and you go, I grabbed this off of Google. I went there in real life, and now I find out, it's 20 feet inside of Gassy Jack's pub, and I wanted it outside the door.
I don't know. I imagine that you should be able to make changes like that. The overall documentation on Adventure Labs is in the early stages. That's probably a good way of saying it. But I can't imagine you not being able to nudge coordinates a bit, change the geofence, for example. But I think, once you've sort of logged it as a set, they don't want to break that set up.
Okay. Wet Coaster says, I did a lab in Prague, and it was in Czech and English.
Excellent. So they took the time to figure out how to make it all fit in the limitation.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I say, there are quite a number of them that are not in English or in multiple languages. But you do have that restriction when you look in each one of the fields of saying, 1,024 characters for the location description. You'd have to figure out how to write it half and half or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's 512 characters per language.
Exactly. And some languages are perhaps more verbose than others. So,
say German.
German.
Yeah. Why would the Germans invent new words when they can put 16, 17 little word parts together to come up with the word that they want to use?
The French, they're funny. They have a different word for everything.
Yes, they do. And if you don't pronounce it properly, they have no idea what you're talking about.
Yes. The Germans have that problem too. There's a pretty funny joke about being a donut, but I don't speak enough French to understand it.
Ich bin no, not ich bin. Ich bin ein Berliner. Yeah, a Berliner.
And one says I'm a Berliner and the other says I'm a donut.
Yeah, so Berliner was a type of donut.
And English is one of the funniest languages for not making any sense.
That's true. That's because it's takes words from other languages and uses them.
And the rules that go along with them for that word.
Exactly. I before E, except after C, unless it doesn't fit.
Yeah. It's been disproved by science.
Oh, isn't a living language interesting? How it keeps changing.
It is.
just look at the way we used to text and how we text now. Okay. So we've gone and created a location. I'm going to bring us back to Adventure Labs.
Oh, I forgot. Okay. Yes.
Let's say we've created multiple locations because this is a lot of fun. We really get excited. We put in all 10 locations and we click live. What happens next?
Well, it's out there. Somebody's going to flip open their communicator, i.e. their phone, and open the Adventure Lab cache. If they don't have it, they need to visit the Apple Store or the Google Play Store and download it onto their phone. They do need an account on geocaching.com, but you can, of course, use one of the free accounts and log into the app, and it's going to show them a map of where they're at. Now, of course, assuming they've got data and all of that other kind of fun stuff, it's going to show them a map of where they're at and show them icons, very much like the icon we created here for the opening location. And they will click on that, and they will see the whole thing about Vancouver Waterfront and the little tease about going to visit the pub owner. and a list of locations. Now, if those locations are in the linear, you'll see the first one sort of highlighted and the balance of them will be grayed out. And if you can do them in any order, well, quite literally, they will all be ready for you to see and to go to with the distance, so you can figure out kind of which one's closest.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And away they go. They go on a great adventure. With Vancouver Waterfront, it does start right at the cruise ship terminal, and it goes to your right and to your left, off on a couple of caches in one direction, and as far in the other direction as Gassy Jack, which we saw.
I mean,
you go up to it. You go up to it, and hopefully, I think the idea is that you actually enjoy the location.
Mm-hmm.
There's some history and some knowledge there. Perhaps look for a cache, find your find code, and log that location.
Now, finding a physical cache is not part of the Adventure Lab. It can be, but it doesn't have to be.
That's correct.
And
yes.
So if you say go find a cache, perhaps there's a cache there. Would you reference that in your description?
So you're talking about standard traditional caches? You certainly could. But you can make caches that are associated with the Adventure Lab as well.
Oh, can you?
Yes, you can. And there's a method of dealing with that. When you get an Adventure Lab, essentially you create a multi-cache and you submit it to the reviewers, but it does not get published like a traditional cache. It remains part of the Adventure Lab.
Okay.
So it wouldn't necessarily have a GC code, although again, you could do that. You could do exactly what you're talking about, publish the GC code for it, have people searching for it as a traditional or a multi, or you can have a container that's hidden that's just completely related to this Adventure Lab. All sorts of ideas, right? All sorts of different directions you can go here. And I think that was the original idea of lab caches, to provide that flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
And they've carried that flexibility now forward into Adventure Labs.
Nice. Kevin, are you open to answer some questions from our faithful listeners?
You bet.
Trexer says, any lessons learned from building your first adventure?
Wow, great question, Jeff. I played around with the geofence for a while. Sort of took me a little bit to get my brain wrapped around what was going on there. I think too that it's almost like hiding 10 caches. You need coordinates and you need photos and you need descriptions. When I first went tripping out to build the Adventure Lab, I thought it was going to be done in an hour. Let me tell you, it's a bit more of an adventure than that.
Oh, so it's an adventure for the builder as well.
For the builder, yeah. So it ended up taking me not tons and tons of time, but longer than I would have thought.
Mm-hmm.
To get it all right, to get all the photography, to find a sunny day in Vancouver.
Well, right there could take you a month.
Exactly. Great question.
Ian shared some answers. He says, the first thing I learned was how to write a description of the location and give a story and location info in 120 or 1,024 characters or less.
Yes, that's my point too. And to do that, if you have a second language that you're trying to deal with, is probably more than twice as complicated.
That's probably true. This is the second thing I learned, is that there's no limit to commercialization of lab caches.
That is also true. That is a something that fits in sort of the geocaching world, but I'm believing, and again, this is my opinion, not geocaching.com's, that this is meant to be much more of a muggle experience.
Oh,
so
kind of
more about let's come into the city and show you around, sort of geocaching light. And so, yeah, there's been no restriction on commercialization. You can actually send people into Starbucks.
Ian goes on to say there's no review process.
As long as there's no physical component. That's absolutely true.
Okay.
Yeah. So if it's all read the sign on the sign of the building, no review required, although it can still be archived for all the standard reasons. Mm-hmm. If you direct people onto private property or any of that kind of stuff, but that's left to you. If you do have the physical component, then you do have to get the reviewer's permission.
Okay. Wet Coaster says, I did the adventure lab in Winnipeg that needed a code word at the beginning of each answer. The code word was obtained from a cache near the start of the adventure.
That's an interesting idea. And I'm just wondering again if that was to thwart armchair loggers.
Mm-hmm. Which is exactly what Ian says. I've heard a lot of people doing that to prevent logging.
Again, you can take the opinion that you don't care. I mean, people are cheating themselves if they do that. And if you want to fight against it, then my best advice is just don't use words that are in a dictionary.
Right.
This might be a good time to use German, actually.
Ooh. Let's see. Trexer says it's interesting to see the variety of levels people use to prevent armchair logging. I've seen some very complex find codes. I think it's less important now that geofencing exists.
Well, from a technical standpoint, geofencing is easier to break than the encryption that they're using on the find codes.
Okay.
So, you obviously, if you're going to armchair log, you have to break both. You have to get the find code and you have to spoof the geofencing. But spoofing geofencing is way easier than breaking some of those codes.
Exactly. Yeah. Ian agrees with you in the fact that he says about the Muggle experience. I think that's what they were trying to go for.
Yeah. It's a geocaching light or, some sort of
tour
there's
guide.
There's 1,000 Muggles out there, and it'll be interesting to see how they commercialize that, because right now it's all free.
Oh, yes, I didn't think about that.
So maybe Starbucks is going to pay them to direct. I have no idea, but nothing is free at the end of the day, right?
Right. Well, you would think somebody. I'm going to pick on Seattle because I know it well. Let's say Pike Place Market wants to get an adventure lab and take you through, the first Starbucks, and here's, where it started out. Now we're walking to, an area that was extended in 1956 and yada, yada.
Yeah. So, it's an experiment for them for sure. And be interesting to see where it goes.
So what do you see coming in adventure labs? Or what would you like to see?
What would I like to see? Well, I've just heard that just tonight from Trexer that you can put logs, and that was one of the things I was looking for. I've had lots of discussions with people about the similarities between Adventure Lab and Where I Go. And I think there's, a very, very simple Where I Go is similar to an Adventure Lab. It'd be interesting if they added some of the functionality, just even the basic stuff of Where I Go, into Adventure Lab. The ability to pick up virtual objects and take them to other virtual locations that'll unlock some other part of the lab. That would be a very, very interesting thing to go, a direction to go in.
So that could add to, say, the linear gameplay of it, but it's only your next location is only unlocked if you pick up or do some action.
Exactly. Right. So maybe you need to pick up a rock and some paper and a pair of scissors and take them to the rock, paper, scissors location, and then you get a find code to carry on.
Interesting. I just did a Where I Go a week ago, where I haven't done one in a while that has you pick things up and, make sure you drop the right thing at the right location in order to continue. I've only done one or two of those that are built that well. And it was a bit of fun, and then it gets to be a little repetitive.
Yeah, I think with all these things, you can't have people going for 6 hours trying to. There's one not far from here where you've got a 3-liter jug and a 5-liter jug and essentially an endless supply of water, but you have to end up with exactly 1 liter of water. And so you have to go somewhere to dump it and somewhere to fill it and somewhere to put one into the other. And it does get long. Sure. So one other thing I'd like to see is closer integration with geocaching.com. Right now you're in a location, you have to open the app to see if there's caches, then you have to open the other app to see if there's an adventure lab. There's some issues with the way that locations with adventure labs, each location showing up in your stats and in your stat reporting. It'd be great if they would just pull these in and call them an official part of geocaching.com.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, that would be nice. Anything else?
No, I think if there's people listening that haven't done an adventure lab, download it on your phone, give it a go.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're definitely around to stay. I mean, lab cache has been around forever. This is just sort of the next generation. And they do add to your stats. Every log counts.
That's right. That's an important one. These the entire lab, not the locations, correct? Is it
each one. If you've got 5 locations, you get 5 fines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ian adds, in terms of that new log thing, if you guys have done labs in the past, you should go back to your completed ones and add a log and a rating to help the cache owners.
That's a great suggestion. The ratings have been around for a while, so I've rated all the ones that I've done. But if they allow me to go back and add a log, I'd love to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Gonna have to go look at that as soon as we're done. Are we done? No.
Yeah, okay, we could be. Ian says drop the lab name.
Yeah, well, that's what I was saying earlier. Is the whole, confusing it with labs. They're calling it adventure labs, and then we get so confused with the lab caches. The only way they could have made it work is call it Where I Lab. They should get rid of it. Really confuse people. But it should be adventures or adventure journeys, or get rid of lab altogether.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us this evening. We really appreciate taking the time to show us the adventure lab builder to see what goes on in the background. Because, if we've gone out and played one or adventured through one, we look at it and go, well, it doesn't look that complicated. It has to be easy. And it's not really.
It's not terribly complicated. It takes some time. And I'm looking forward to trying to figure out what to do with mine. I've got a couple of ideas. But I only got it last week, and so I'm still developing where it's going to go. I'd like to make mine a little more complex than some of the others.
Well, just bring down that geofence to within a meter of the location and hope that their GPS is accurate enough to tell them that they're in the zone. There you go. Level of complexity.
There'll be people like running into each other as they're trying to get in that little space, right? And wait for the lawsuits.
It could be like a dating adventure lab.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. If you see somebody standing in one spot extremely still, they're available. I don't want to know what the fine code is.
Yeah. From cheesy pickup line?
Yeah, there you go. Of which I have a million, none of which are appropriate for a show like this.
Oh, well, let's not go there then. You know where we are going? Next week, we are going to have episode 411 with needs maintenance and needs archive logging. And do you know who we're going to have for that?
Who?
We are going to have GSM times 2.
Awesome.
In the chat with us tonight. So
I'll look forward. I'm sure there'll be some great advice.
Oh, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And of course, we ask that you check the Cachemaniacs website at cachemaniacs.com for more on the Geo Gearheads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads at cachemaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Don't forget that your support helps keep the Cachemaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cachemaniac shows. Geo Gearheads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg, and this show's copyright 2019 by Daryl Wattenberg, all rights reserved.
Cash with the Cachemaniacs.